Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein.
Danger. Continuing danger. Hour of danger.
بالإعدام شنقا حتى الموت لارتكاب الشعب.
Imagine waking up, not knowing it's the last time you'll ever open your eyes. For one man who terrorized a nation for decades, December 29, 2006 started like any other day behind bars. But it wouldn't end that way. This is the minute-by-minute account of how a dictator spent his final hours on Earth. The concrete cell was freezing. No daylight had ever touched these walls. For nearly 3 years, this 8x10 space had been his entire world. Think about that for a second. From presidential palaces to this. The guards outside, they knew something he didn't. Whispered conversations, changed schedules. The paperwork had finally come through. The execution was approved. But how do you tell a man he has 24 hours left to live? You don't. Not yet. He moved through his morning like clockwork, stretching, pacing, reading, the same routine he'd followed for 1,000 days. But here's what the guards noticed. He kept looking at them longer than usual, his eyes searching their faces for answers they couldn't give. Some guards had started to see him differently over the years, not as the monster from the history books, but as a tired old man who told stories about his childhood, who complained about back pain, who said thank you when they brought his meals. It's disturbing, isn't it? How we humanize people when we spend enough time with them, even the worst of us. That evening, they brought him dinner. Nothing fancy, rice, chicken, flatbread. But it was different from the usual prison rations. He ate slowly, methodically, savoring each bite like he knew. Because somehow, he did know. Nobody had said a word, but you can feel death coming, can't you? It changes the air in a room, the way people look at you, the silence that's just a little too heavy. The guards couldn't meet his eyes. Their hands were steady, but inside, their hearts were pounding. One guard later admitted, "I kept thinking, in a few hours, this man eating dinner in front of me will be gone, forever." 3 a.m., December 30th. The cell door opened. 2 figures stepped inside, a U.S. military officer and his longtime interpreter. The man who'd translated his words for years was about to speak the hardest sentence of his life. "It's time. You need to prepare." For a moment, nothing. Just breathing. Just silence. Then his response, calm and cold. "I have been sentenced to death before." No panic, no begging, just acceptance. The interpreter would later say he felt physically sick delivering those words, not because the man was innocent, but because it's different when you're standing there, looking into someone's eyes, telling them they're about to die. What happened next was almost ritualistic. He asked to wash. They let him. He cleaned his face and arms with the kind of care you'd take before a wedding or a funeral. He chose a suit, dark, formal, pressed. Then he searched for something, a specific pair of socks. When he couldn't find them, he actually asked the guards for help. Imagine that, hours from execution, and he's worried about matching socks. They found them buried under folded clothes. Then came the cologne. He sprayed it everywhere. One guard said, "You could smell him from across the compound." Pride? Dignity? Delusion? Maybe all three. Even facing death, he wanted to look like a leader. Before leaving, he did something unexpected. He called over one of the guards, someone he'd grown close to over the years. Through the bars, he handed him his watch, a Raymond wheel he'd worn during his trial appearances. The guard refused. "I can't take this, it's against regulations." But he insisted, "You've been kind to me. Please, I want you to have it." The guard took it, not because of its value, but because in that moment, it wasn't a dictator giving a gift. It was a man saying goodbye the only way he could. Several guards later admitted they felt something they didn't expect: sympathy. Not for what he'd done, but for what was about to happen. Because watching any human being prepare to die changes you. They loaded him onto a helicopter. It lifted off into the darkness over Baghdad. Below him, the city he'd ruled with an iron fist for 24 years slept peacefully, unaware he was flying overhead one last time. The helicopter landed at a place with a twisted history, a building that under his own regime had been used for torture and executions. Now renamed Camp Justice, the irony wasn't lost on anyone. He was handed over to Iraqi officials. The Americans stepped back. This wasn't their moment. An Iraqi judge read the sentence. He held a Quran and said nothing. Then they led him to the platform. As he climbed the stairs, the room erupted. Witnesses, former victims, enemies began chanting, shouting names of leaders he'd tried to silence. He looked at them and smirked. "Is this your courage?" When someone yelled an insult, he shot back one final response, his last words of defiance. Then he began to pray, the Islamic Shahada, the final words of faith. He got through the first line. Then the floor dropped. 6 a.m., December 30th, 2006. It was over. Outside, gunshots echoed. Not in anger, but celebration. Some danced, some wept, some stood in silence. For some, it was justice. For others, just another chapter in a story that would never truly end. The man who ruled with fear spent his final hours doing something surprisingly human, preparing for death with dignity, prayer, and a pair of matching socks. What do you think? Was this justice or revenge? Drop your thoughts below. And if you want more untold stories about history's most controversial figures, hit subscribe, because every life ends with a countdown.